I would like to read from just a few paragraphs from Francis Schaeffer's book, How Should We Then Live? Subtitled The Rise and Decline of Western Thought and Culture. To understand where we are in today's world, in our intellectual ideas, in our cultural and political lives, he says that we have to trace three lines in history, namely the philosophic, the scientific, and the religious. In many ways, Rome was great, but it had no real answers to the basic problems that all humanity faces. Much of Roman thought and culture was shaped by Greek thinking, especially after Greece came under Roman rule in 146 BC. The Greeks and later Romans tried to build a society upon their gods, but these gods were not big enough because they were finite, limited. Even all their gods put together were not infinite. Actually, the gods in Greek and Roman thinking were like men and women, larger than life, but not basically different from human men and women. One example among thousands that we can think of is the statue of Hercules, standing inebriated and urinating. Hercules was a patron god of Herculaneum, which was destroyed at the same time as Pompeii. The gods were amplified humanity, not divinity. Like the Greeks, the Romans had no infinite God. They did not have anything big enough or permanent enough to which to relate either their thinking or their living. Consequently, their value system was not strong enough to bear the strains of life, either individual or political. All their gods put together could not give them a sufficient base for life, morals, values, and final decisions. These gods depended on the society which had made them, and when this society collapsed, the gods tumbled with it. Thus, the Greek and Roman experiments in social harmony, which rested on an elitist republic, ultimately failed. Before the days of Caesar, the Senate could not keep order. Armed gangs terrorized the city of Rome, and the normal processes of government were disrupted as rivals fought for power. Self-interest became more important than social interest, however sophisticated the trappings. In desperation, the people accepted authoritarian government. As Plutarch, in Lives of Noble Greeks and Romans, the Romans made Caesar dictator for life in the hope that the government of a single person would give them time to breathe after so many civil wars and calamities. After Caesar's death, Octavian, who lived from 63 BC to 14 AD, later called Caesar Augustus, grandnephew of Caesar, came to power. He'd become Caesar's son by adoption. The great poet Virgil was a friend of Augustus, and he wrote the Aeneid with the object of showing that Augustus was a divinely appointed leader and that Rome's mission was to bring peace and civilization to the world. Because Augustus established peace externally and internally, and because he kept the outward forms of constitutionality, Romans of every class were ready to allow him total power in order to restore and assure the functioning of a political system, a business, and the affairs of daily life. Rome was cruel. Its cruelty can be perhaps best pictured by the events which took place in the arena in Rome itself. People seated above the arena floor watched gladiator contests and Christians thrown to the beasts. Now, let us not forget why the Christians were killed. They were not killed because they worshiped Jesus. Various religions covered the whole Roman world. Nobody cared who worshiped whom, so long as the worshiper did not disrupt the unity of the state, centered in the formal worship of Caesar. The reason the Christians were killed was because they were rebels. This was especially so after their growing rejection by the Jewish synagogues lost for them their immunity granted to the Jews since Julius Caesar's time. We may express the nature of their rebellion in two ways, both of which are true. First, we can say they worship Jesus as God, and they worship the infinite personal God only. The Caesars would not tolerate this worshiping of one God only. It was counted as treason. Thus, their worship became a special threat to the unity of the state during the 3rd century and during the reign of Diocletian, which was from 284 to 305 AD. When people of the higher classes began to become Christians in large numbers, if they had worshipped Jesus and Caesar, they would have gone unharmed. But they rejected all forms of syncretism. They worshiped the God who had revealed himself in the Old Testament through Christ, and in the New Testament, which had gradually been written. And they worshipped him as the only God. They allowed no mixture. All other gods were seen as false gods. We can also express in a second way why the Christians were killed. No totalitarian authority nor authoritarian state can tolerate those who have an absolute by which to judge that state and its actions. Let me repeat that again. No totalitarian authority nor authoritarian state can tolerate those who have an absolute by which to judge that state and its actions. The Christians had that absolute in God's revelation. Because the Christians had an absolute universal standard by which to judge not only personal morals, but the state. They were counted as enemies of totalitarian Rome and were thrown to the beasts. I will end with my words and just say that how true that is today.